My parents stole my $120,000 MBA fund from my golden sister's dream house. Justice, karma, and Uncle Jake's ruthless plan restored it all. I never imagined I'd be on Reddit posting stuff like this, but here I am. Recently, I, a 28-year-old female, learned that my parents had embezzled my $120,000 MBA money to assist my sister, Ashley, who is 35, and her fiancé, Nathan, who is 37, in purchasing a home. I'm still trying to comprehend the extent of their betrayal, and the entire scenario feels unreal. Allow me to walk you through the first part of this nightmare. Dad's parents, my grandparents, were extremely well off and always placed a high priority on education. They were traditional in the finest sense of the word. They valued hard work, conserving money, and making long-term investments. I didn't get to visit them very frequently because they lived in a different state, but whenever we spoke or met, they expressed their concern for my future. Education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you, my grandmother used to say, and now I see how ironic that is. My grandfather died 3 years ago following a brief illness. Even though it was awful, Grandma was still with us. She was the family's pillar of support, recognizing each birthday and accomplishment and sending heartfelt cards and care packages. We also lost her last year. On the day of her death, I was sitting in my apartment going over every letter she had ever sent me. I was unaware at the time that she and Grandpa had been constructing something much larger for my future, but each one included some life lessons and typically a modest check for your education fund. When their will was read, the allocation first appeared equitable. My parents inherited savings and the home. Ashley received family treasures and all of grandmother's jewelry, which was valued at tens of thousands of dollars. A sizable education fund was bequeathed to me, specifically for my MBA courses. According to the will, this money was to be utilized only for my schooling. My parents were assigned to oversee it until I required it. Because I was already employed, I was appreciative at the time that my grandparents had given my future such serious consideration. I never once imagined my parents would tamper with the fund. In retrospect, though, I ought to have recognized the warning signs. Ashley has always been our family's golden child, even from my earliest recollections. It's difficult to say without coming across as resentful, but she was the person my parents loved the most. She was great at all she did. She was incredibly gifted, diligent, and unique. I can still clearly recall graduating from high school. I had recently won a prominent science competition, received a full scholarship to college, and was valedictorian. When I looked out at the audience during my speech, my parents were using their phones and hardly paying attention. Later that night, they were ecstatic when Ashley, who had already dropped out of college twice, revealed she was considering a career in teaching. "You are simply amazing with kids," they exclaimed. I received a brief, good job acknowledgement for my accomplishments that day. This trend persisted throughout my life. I worked hard, graduated with honors, and got a position at a famous company. Over the past 6 years, I have ascended the corporate ladder, gaining the respect and admiration of both superiors and colleagues. As a senior project manager, I oversee a group of 15 employees and manage accounts worth millions of dollars. However, to my parents, I was always just the sensible one, the one who succeeded easily because I was naturally smart. Ashley, on the other hand, changed jobs several times before becoming a teacher. She is currently the kindergarten administrator at a tiny private school. Nathan is the head zookeeper at our neighborhood zoo. I don't have any personal problems with them, and they're decent enough folks. Although they appear content and are competent in their careers, their combined income is meager at best. For the past year, they had been discussing the necessity of purchasing a home nonstop. Each family meal became a debate about the cost of real estate and how they were throwing money away on rent. They would lament the unfairness of the market while admiring homes that were much beyond their means. Even though Ashley and Nathan are in their mid-30s, they are still viewed as young people in need of assistance. My parents would nod empathetically and say things like, "You deserve a nice house, and it's so hard for young people these days." About a month ago, I began working on my MBA program applications. I had been preparing for this move for years, so it wasn't an abrupt decision. I've done a ton of program research, strategically developed my profession, and kept up a flawless work record. I want to enroll in a prestigious program that will enable me to advance into executive leadership roles at my present employer. Every C-level executive has an MBA from a reputable university, and I'm resolved to do the same. One evening, I mentioned the education fund to my parents because the application costs alone for prestigious MBA programs can amount to thousands of dollars. I needed to know exactly how much was accessible. Their response should have been my first genuine warning sign. "Don't worry about it," my dad murmured, shifting uneasily in his chair. My mother hurriedly added, "Just concentrate on your applications for the time being. We'll talk when the time comes." They then abruptly shifted the conversation to Ashley and Nathan's house hunting. I initially tried to dismiss it, thinking perhaps they were simply being clumsy with the papers. However, something didn't feel right. A week later, I brought it up again, more bluntly. I clarified that I needed to know if the funds were available because I needed to budget for applying to multiple prestigious schools. At that point, they dropped the bomb. "We used the MBA money for Ashley," my mother replied in the most casual way possible. "She is purchasing a home with Nathan." Thinking I must have misheard, I gazed at her. My dad added that Ashley needed it right now and that it wouldn't be fair for me to get a free ride when Ashley had worked so hard with student loans. When I asked my mother to repeat herself, I went crazy. I'm not proud of my response, but it was the release of years' worth of repressed annoyance. I insisted on knowing how they could harm me and how they could embezzle the funds my grandparents had set aside expressly for my schooling. I pointed out that it was prohibited, though we'll have been clear about how that money was to be utilized. My mother simply shrugged, as if I were exaggerating. "You'll figure it out," she said. "It's not as though you can't borrow money like everyone else." They pretended that they had done nothing wrong and that neither my future nor my grandparents' wishes mattered. I then brought up taking legal action. Even though I'm not a lawyer, it's obvious that what they did was unlawful. And what did they do, you know? They chuckled. No, they laughed aloud, not merely chuckling. "With what money?" my father asked, staring me in the eye. "Even a lawyer is out of your price range." Additionally, my mother said, "Don't be silly. This is a family matter." The humiliation I felt at the time is beyond words. Stunned, I stood there. The realization that they had always viewed me as an afterthought came to me suddenly. Someone whose future they could forego in order to help Ashley. They didn't care about my financial freedom, my prosperous career, or my academic accomplishments. I would remain the underdog forever. I had trouble sleeping that night. I couldn't stop thinking about how my grandparents had trusted my parents to act morally. They were unaware of the true nature of my home life. I never told anyone about how I was treated since it didn't seem worth it. I mean, I wasn't being mistreated, was I? They simply didn't care about me as much as they did about Ashley. They weren't violent. The following morning, I arrived at work early and asked to speak with my employer, Mr. Thompson, in private. He has been a mentor to me since I started working for the company. Therefore, he's not just any boss. He has always encouraged me to pursue my career goals and has seen me rise from a junior role to team leader. More significantly, he has experience in corporate law and keeps up relationships with leading law firms. I also intended to get in touch with my dad's cousin, Uncle Jake. He is a prosperous businessman who consistently seemed to see through the partiality of my parents. Although he wasn't there much when I was growing up, he always showed genuine interest in my accomplishments and future aspirations. In addition, he is the only person in my family who has greater influence and accomplishment than my parents. Something inside of me exploded when my parents made fun of me. Even though I never wanted things to go ugly, since I've always been the quiet one, the sensible one who never caused a stir, they assumed I had no influence. However, they're going to discover that the daughter they have consistently undervalued is much more powerful than they initially thought. A lot has transpired since my last post 2 weeks ago. Things proceeded more quickly than I had anticipated following my visit with Mr. Thompson. In addition to giving me his full support, he put me in touch with a contact at Wilson & Partners, one of the best law firms in the city. This is about holding your parents accountable and respecting your grandparents' wishes, not just about money, he reminded me. It was enlightening to meet the attorneys. They attested to the fact that my parents' acts clearly violated the terms of the will and their fiduciary duties. Finding out that my parents might be charged with a crime for their acts shocked me the most. The lawyers also found something unsettling. My parents had begun moving the funds to Ashley's account months before they told me. Uncle Jake's intervention, however, was the true game changer. Within hours of my contacting him on LinkedIn, he gave me a call. He responded in a way that exceeded my expectations. "I always knew your parents played favorites," he replied. "But stealing from their own daughter? That crosses every line. Don't worry about the legal fees. I'm handling everything." Uncle Jake was more than simply a talker. He acted immediately. He He assembled a group of attorneys with expertise in estate law and engaged a forensic accountant to track down every penny of the pilfered money. They gathered enough proof in a matter of days to demonstrate that my parents had spent months draining the college money in a methodical manner. The initial altercation took place on Friday. I was called by my parents' attorney in an attempt to reach a family settlement. In exchange for me dropping any legal action, they promised to cover some of the MBA expenses. Uncle Jake responded harshly, saying, "You will either be charged with a crime or return the entire sum plus interest and penalties. No negotiations will take place." The response from my parents was priceless. They began sending me emails nonstop. "How could you involve outsiders in family matters? We were going to help you eventually. You're destroying this family." Without replying, I sent everything to Uncle Jake's legal team. He then disclosed the second part of his strategy. In addition to pursuing the money, he was advocating for a thorough examination of my parents' financial transactions, implying there might be further irregularities we were unaware of at the time. Yesterday, Ashley finally spoke up. She claimed in a lengthy email to me that she was clueless about the source of the house money. "Mom and Dad said they had savings set aside for us," she wrote in her letter. "I never thought they would steal your money." She concluded by requesting that I exercise common sense and come up with a family solution. I showed Uncle Jake her email. His answer was straightforward: send it on to the attorneys. It proved she was aware of the money after the fact, but made no attempt to return it. Therefore, she is complicit. This morning brought the most fulfilling moment yet. The lawyer for my parents called Uncle Jake in a hurry. The forensic accountant had apparently found that my parents had started utilizing their power of attorney to transfer money even before my grandma passed away. This could greatly increase the charges. Right now, my parents are making a valiant effort to turn things around. Mom begged me to contact them in a heartfelt voicemail, stating that they would find a way to pay back the money. Dad acknowledged in an email that they may have made a mistake, but maintained that they were just trying to help the family. Uncle Jake gave straightforward advice. Avoid answering anything. Let them panic. When you were weak, they made fun of you. Now it's their turn to feel helpless. All of this has been made possible by Mr. Thompson's tremendous assistance. In addition to producing an excellent reference letter, he has already approved my leave of absence for when I begin my MBA school. He informed me today, "You're displaying remarkable composure. Not many people could handle this situation with such professionalism." Unless my parents return the entire sum plus fines, the legal team is preparing to bring official charges the following week. Uncle Jake predicts that in order to pay for everything, they will have to sell some assets. But in his own words, that's their problem, not yours. Until this is addressed, I will be staying with a friend. Building security had been told not to let my parents into my apartment when they attempted to visit. In order to record any attempts by my parents to get in touch with me, Uncle Jake also engaged a private investigator. If required, this material could be used to demonstrate harassment. 3 weeks have passed since my last report, and things have significantly worsened. At last, I am able to provide the specifics of how our legal strategy developed. Much more was revealed by the forensic inquiry than we had anticipated. During our first court filing, the first bombshell was revealed. Uncle Jake's team found that my parents had been misusing their power of attorney over my grandmother's funds in her last months, in addition to stealing my MBA fund. Long before my grandma died, the evidence showed that they were methodically shifting funds around in order to transfer them to Ashley. During the initial hearing, their lawyer's expression was priceless. It was obvious that he was unaware of the severity of their financial misdeeds. He actually requested a break to speak with my parents after our legal team showed them the recorded chronology of transactions. Later on, I found out that he confronted my parents for not telling him certain facts, and he was considering leaving their case. The previous caregiver for my grandmother made the most startling admission. Seeing our legal notification regarding the estate documents, she contacted Uncle Jake. It turns out that my grandmother had made it very clear that the money was only for my education by bringing up the MBA fund with my parents several times in her last months. These exchanges were also recorded in the caregiver's notes. She had been documenting every family conversation in a care diary. Ashley's participation also changed in an intriguing way. After realizing the legal ramifications of accepting stolen funds, she hired her own attorney. Because they expected her to support the family narrative, this caused a serious gap between her and our parents. My parents were in a panic when her lawyer suggested that she should keep her distance from the matter. The situation with the house became especially disorganized. The acquisition was investigated by the court since the down payment was made using stolen money. The problem was communicated to Ashley and Nathan's mortgage lender, who examined the loan application. A fraud investigation might be initiated if my parents falsified any of the financial records they co-signed. Unexpectedly, Uncle Jake's team also discovered that my parents had been informing members of my extended family that I had consented to give Ashley my MBA fund. They seemed to have been preparing their defense in case the money transfer was questioned, as they had been fabricating this story for months. Now, a number of family members came forward with emails and messages from my parents that support this untrue story. The deposition was the most satisfying development. My father made an effort to keep his haughty demeanor until Uncle Jake's attorney produced proof of their calculated scheme. It was quite painful to watch him struggle to describe what they had done. My mother truly lost it when she acknowledged that they had no intention of repaying the money they had stolen. They have been almost hilarious in their attempts to control the damage. Despite numerous recorded conversations with my grandmother and their attorneys showing otherwise, they are now attempting to assert that they were perplexed by the wording of the will. 2 of their previous attorneys had already resigned, so this was their 3rd attorney, and they were frantically trying to reach a settlement. The final terms were outlined by our legal team, who made it apparent there was no room for discussion. Every penny they took would have to be paid back with interest, starting from the day they took the money. They would also be responsible for paying for all of our legal fees, including the forensic investigation, which had become quite expensive. We also insisted that they stop gaslighting, attempting to rewrite the facts, and submit a formal written admission of their misconduct. Last but not least, they would need to sign a legally enforceable contract committing them to stop communicating with me in any way. No more utilizing family members as messengers, deceptive messages, or unexpected visits. The socioeconomic status of my parents was deteriorating. Several of their acquaintances quietly told me how shocked they were, and word spread throughout their neighborhood. My father's golf club reconsidered his membership, and my mother's bridge club asked her to resign as treasurer. People don't feel comfortable associating with someone who would steal from their own child. It turns out, Ashley's circumstances were also getting worse. Concerned about having a principal embroiled in financial malfeasance, the board of directors at her school set a meeting to review her position. Because Nathan co-signed loan documents that might include misleading information, his place of employment initiated an ethics assessment. The next development was quite pleasing. Do you recall how my folks snickered when I brought up the idea of filing a lawsuit? In order to stop any further financial fraud, Uncle Jake's team submitted a motion to freeze their assets. Within hours, their attorney contacted us, pleading for a settlement conference. Uncle Jake remained brutal. In response to my parents' attempts to appeal to family loyalty, he sent a caustic email, copying the entire extended family. Family loyalty? You lost any right to talk about loyalty when you stole from your daughter and laughed in her face. Get ready to face the consequences of your actions. My parents were getting really upset because I hadn't spoken to them at all. They turned to using friends and family to get in touch on their behalf, but each effort simply strengthened our allegation of harassment. Every day, their desperation became more apparent. 4 months have passed since my last update, and I can now finally reveal the story's resolution. The outcome of the final court procedures was more devastating for my parents than any of us could have imagined. Allow me to explain how justice was ultimately achieved. Let me start by sharing my favorite moment. The final hearing, when my parents realized they had no other choice. At last, their facade broke. In her closing remarks, the judge was severe, describing their behavior as a calculated betrayal of both their daughter and their own parents' last wishes. She noted, in particular, that their laughter at my initial legal threat showed a startling degree of moral decay. In the end, the forensic analysis showed that my parents had been preparing this heist for more than a year prior to my grandmother's passing. They had methodically fabricated fictitious family contracts and documented fictitious discussions about me voluntarily relinquishing the MBA fund. According to the court, their premeditation made their actions considerably worse. The fines were hefty. In addition to returning my MBA money plus interest, they were mandated to pay punitive damages that nearly doubled the initial amount. The judge justified the severe punishment by pointing to their deliberate malice and repeated attempts to mislead the court. The poetic part is that my parents had to sell their homies, the home they inherited from my grandparents, in order to pay these charges. The irony was not lost on anyone. They have significantly downgraded from their previous way of life to renting a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. Their decline in society has been dramatic. Membership in the country club? Retracted. Seats on various community boards? Lost. The social network my mother built over decades fell apart. It turns out that upper-middle-class suburban society doesn't tolerate stealing from one's child and lying about it. The repercussions on the job were just as bad. My father, who took great satisfaction in his business reputation, was compelled to retire early. No one wants to do business with someone legally proven to have stolen from their own child's inheritance. His former coworkers now steer clear of him at local businesses. My mother, once a leader in local charity organizations, was forced to leave her volunteer post. The final straw was when they were asked to resign from all leadership positions at their church, where they had been active members for 20 years. They've become social pariahs in their own community. Arguably, the most noteworthy development involved Ashley and Nathan's relationship and their ideal home. Things went downhill fast when the mortgage firm learned the down payment was made with stolen money. They revoked the loan approval. Ashley and Nathan are now dealing with their own legal problems stemming from their willful acceptance of stolen funds. Ashley's career completely collapsed. In a formal statement, the school board cited ethical concerns and a loss of community trust as reasons for unanimously voting to remove her as principal. With the news spreading through the local school community, she is now struggling to find even entry-level teaching jobs. Nathan's situation wasn't much better. The zoo placed him on administrative leave while investigating his involvement in the financial misbehavior. Although not directly responsible for the theft, his signature on loan documents containing false information created ethical questions. The strain proved too much for their relationship. Nathan moved out of their apartment last week. He accused Ashley of being just like her parents, while she accused him of not being supportive enough. They are now in the process of calling off their engagement. Uncle Jake's plan for total social and legal ruin succeeded beyond prediction. When my parents attempted one last plea for family loyalty, he set up a family meeting not to reconcile, but to lay bare their actions before the entire extended family. At this meeting, he presented a timeline of their deceit, detailing the false documents they created and the lies they told. Disgust was the universal response. Several family members who initially tried to mediate now publicly denounced my parents. The meeting effectively ended any remaining family support they might have had. The most telling moment came when my mother's sister, always one of their staunchest supporters, stood up and stated, "I don't even recognize who you are anymore." As for me, I've emerged stronger. My MBA fund has been fully restored, along with significant damages. Besides getting my money back, I was accepted into a top-tier MBA program with a merit scholarship. In his reference letter, Mr. Thompson highlighted my integrity and skill in navigating this ordeal. My employer has been incredibly supportive, granting me leave for the MBA program and even promising an executive position upon graduation. Your handling of this situation proved you have the judgment and fortitude required for senior leadership, Mr. Thompson told me. Uncle Jake has become a true mentor. He's already discussing potential investment opportunities post-MBA and has introduced me to his business network. Your grandparents would be proud, he told me. You've shown you have the backbone for business. I've relocated to an upscale apartment in a gated community, ensuring my parents are kept at bay. The doorman has their photos with instructions not to admit them. Their numbers and emails are blocked. Any communication attempts are routed directly to our legal team. The final twist? The zoo where Nathan used to work is adjacent to my parents' new apartment complex. Every day, they must see the place that symbolizes the beginning of their downfall. As Uncle Jake remarked, karma can have a sense of humor. Yesterday, someone from their former social circle sent me an anonymous note. Apparently, my mother rarely leaves home now, except for necessities. My father reportedly spends hours alone at a local coffee shop, just staring into space. Their once-packed social calendar is completely empty. As I prepare to start my MBA, I often reflect on my grandmother's words. Education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you. She was right. Thanks to her foresight and Uncle Jake's help, I've not only secured my education fund, but also taught my parents an indelible lesson. That concludes this story. I appreciate everyone's support throughout this journey. Though I never wished for this outcome, I find peace in knowing justice prevailed. Thank you for reading. If you haven't subscribed yet, Please consider doing so and hitting the notification bell to stay updated with more real-life stories.